believe it or not, I am an introvert. And I,
You never are. It just never comes across. I mean,
the key to social media is making an impression. Is it something I would say normally? Is it adding value? Is it interesting? No.
hello, everyone, and welcome to Sphere of Success, the podcast that looks at challenge and adversity in business and how, as business leaders and entrepreneurs, we can really optimize and alchemize those challenges and that adversity into things like resilience, success, growth, creativity, innovation, thinking about doing things differently as a result. And today I have with me, oh my goodness, you're going to love this gentleman. He is fantastic. Gentleman called Andrew Bloch, and I'm just going to read his bio now because it's absolutely stellar. So, Andrew is recognized globally for consistently ranking as one of the world's most influential PR figures. He is the founder of Andrew Bloch and Associates, a boutique consultancy specializing in the communications and marketing industry. His portfolio includes non-executive director, board advisory, consultancy, and project roles for a range of high growth marketing agencies. His expertise lies in fostering new business relationships, identifying opportunities, and enhancing overall value. And what we're going to be talking about today is, yes, it's going to be to do with AI, but it's also going to be doing a little bit because I'm one of these people. I'm an introvert. You might not realize it through the podcast, but I'm not one for lots of crowds and big networking scenes because I get kind of overwhelmed and it's really tiring for me. So, we're going to actually think about how we can use AI to amplify brands, scale smart, and stand out in a crowded market for people like me who are introverted entrepreneurs. So, welcome, Andrew. It's lovely to have you on the show. And I know we're going to go through our paces, etc., today for the audience. So, welcome to the show. It's lovely to have
Thanks,
you
Deborah.
here.
Thank you. No, thank you. And thanks for such a generous introduction. It's embarrassing to listen to. I feel like I've got a lot to live up to now.
Oh, well, I mean, you know, everybody listening, you should actually have a look at Andrew's LinkedIn because it's absolutely amazing what he's achieved, you know, awards and big PR businesses that he's been involved with. So it really is stellar. One of the things I'd love you to do, Andrew, if that's okay, is take us a bit through your history and let the audience know what got you into PR because you know it's all very glamorous. I remember AbFab and the lady that had the you know the PR thing. Yeah, just take us through and what got you involved.
Of course. Well, the truth of it is, initially I wanted to go into advertising, and it was a teacher of mine at school, my art teacher, who said, I think you'd be good in advertising. And it was the first and perhaps only time that a teacher had ever said I'd be good at anything. So I clung on to that idea. And whilst I was applying for ad agencies, which was a very long, arduous process, someone, my mother claims it's her, so we'll go with that, said, why don't you try PR? That's similar. So whilst I was going through the motions of all of the ad agency interviews, I wrote to a load of PR companies. And funny you say AdFab, because where I got offered a work placement was Lynn Frank's PR, and that agency was the inspiration for absolutely fabulous. And it was a totally crazy, mad place. And as cliched as it sounds, I fell in love with it from the second I stepped through the door. And I loved the pace, the energy, I loved the creativity. It was an incredible agency, a completely defining agency of its era. So I was very lucky to end up there because really I'd just randomly written to anyone who I could find without any real knowledge. So I ended up in the perfect place. Cutting a long story short, that's where I met my future business partner, the MD of that agency. And after a couple of iterations within that agency and sort of building my way up to head of sport and entertainment, working on some great clients, that boss at the time was my boss said, why don't we set up a PR agency together? And we did. And we called that agency Frank, which was a bit of a play on the Lynn Frank's heritage and all the good bits and the creativity and the iconic status of the agency. But it was also a reflection of our personalities, which was about being frank, open, honest, no BS. We built that agency. We opened up offices around the world in Australia, in New York, as well as sort of across the UK, Manchester, Glasgow. We sold the agency. I stayed with that agency for 20 years, which took us to 2020. And at that point, I felt I just had a bit of an entrepreneurial itch to scratch. So I went non-exec at first. Now I'm actually we've sold the business to an EOT, so I'm actually not even a shareholder anymore. And then I went out on my own to do something. I kind of thought to myself, what do I enjoy? What do I not enjoy? What do I want to do? What am I good at? What am I bad at? I figured out I didn't really want to have employees. I wanted to partner and use my black book of the best contacts in the business to be able to find solutions for people within the marketing services industry. So now I do everything from run big pitch processes for big brands like Starbucks, Goldman Sachs, Greggs. I buy and sell agencies on behalf of private equity firms or other marketing services groups. I invest in agencies. So I've invested in a network of agencies called Stacked. I've set up a talent agency and invested in that, a business called Big Dog Talent. I consult to lots of marketing agencies on growth and how they can build, eventually sell their businesses. Oh, what else? I lose track of everything I'm doing.
Well, I tell you what, it's like a roll of honor. I mean, it's just amazing what you've achieved. And one of the
Thank
things
you.
I was going to say, my pleasure. I mean, it's wonderful to hear. I mean, you really do back up what you do with a wealth of experience. You don't just, talk the talk, you walk the talk as well. And you've stood the test of time in a very competitive, high stakes sector. And, one wrong move and that could have a domino effect of disaster. To be able to keep on top of that and be at the top of your game the whole time, I think is amazing. And bringing this back to the theme of our podcast and people who might be a bit introverted, who are listening to this and go, because I'm like, oh my goodness, how can people with this, people like me who are introverts, you've scaled businesses, you've sold multiple businesses, you've got them to a level where you're getting investors saying, yeah, we want to take this on. And a lot of, I think, introverted people, they think, do you have to be this big show person? I mean, you're in the PR industry, it sounds like you might have to be. How would you say introverts can really get to scale their business and still have that as a strength, their introversion as a strength as opposed to a weakness?
It's such a brilliant question. And believe it or not, I am an introvert. And I,
You never are. It just never comes across. I mean, people say about me, but you're an introvert as well.
I mean, I think I am. I mean, I'm certainly not a kind of networking, go to a cheese and wine type party with a name badge on. That's not me. But I recognize the importance of branding. I recognize the importance of personal branding and building a personal profile. I've always been more comfortable making other people famous, being the person behind the people that are famous. And for many years, I had an agency where I saw the value of being able to promote that agency, because if you can build a brand that people can relate to, they understand what you're doing, they know what you stand for, they come to you as opposed to you have to go to them. So my networking, if you want to call it that, was built out of a fear of picking up the phone and making sales calls. So I, not just me, a team of people, built that agency brand set, became one of the most well-known and recognized brands in the industry. And I think there is a stat, there's something like 30,000 marketing agencies in the UK. Why is someone going to...
30,000 marketing agencies.
I would argue there's probably even more, but
Probably,
I think
yeah.
registered companies, there is 30,000 companies registered in the UK. Why is someone going to choose you? They've got to understand what sets you apart. And sometimes we're a bit fearful of having a point of view, putting our head above the parapet. But if you don't, you're just beige and bland and boring. So for many years, I've worked on building a brand for the agency that I headed up. And it was about being creative. It was about creating talkability, share a voice, getting people talking about your campaigns, and that kind of buzz that takes over and does your best marketing for you. That was our brand. And then all of a sudden, I'd step back and I didn't have employees. And deliberately, I called the name of my company Andrew Bloch Associates, which sounds like the most uncreative, boring name in the world. But I recognized that the buck sort of stopped and started with me, and it would be important for SEO. And whilst I could have come up with a cool, quirky name, actually I was the brand. But I did feel this sort of level of discomfort as someone who was slightly introverted. And, you know, the simple answer is you have to be authentic in the way you communicate. So I could give you a plan, but if it didn't feel like it was right for you, it's never going to work. So if you're not a showman and you're not jazz hands and you're not an in front of camera type person, you've got to find a different way to do it. And if you look at the way that I communicate, anyone that knows me will almost hear the words that they read coming out of my mouth, because I say it like it is. I would like to think I have a level of humility, a bit of humor, a bit of self-deprecation. I just try and be myself. It's not for everyone. It could definitely be more slick. It could be more polished. But, you know, when I grew up in an era of people that were recognizing the importance of personal branding, rather than copy what anyone else was doing, I did something that felt right for me. And you have, you know, great entrepreneurs, people like Stephen Bartlett, who built his agency by effectively building a personal brand around himself and having cameras follow him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a year, for 2 years. That's not me. It worked for him. In the same way he would find what I did. We've talked about it before. I know he does. Like, it's a different way of doing it. I was building the agency, and yes, you knew my name, you knew my partner's name, you knew other key people within the agency's name, but it was the name above the door, which was the bit that was the brand. So you have to find something that's right for you and works for you. And once you do that, you can go from there. And I know you wanted to talk about AI and the impact of AI and how it can help, which I'm happy to do now, unless you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, no, I love this because you see, it leads nicely on because I'm all about authenticity. I had a nervous breakthrough, and I'm very honest with that because I want everybody to know if you're having a tough time of it, and
Yeah,
lots of people are. If you'd have asked me while I was going through it how I would have said I was fine. So
yeah,
I always put it out there to people because it's not me being a victim or me being all poor me. No, no, no. The breakthrough came when I couldn't not be all of the different personas that I put on to try and deal with my introversion.
yes,
It came back and bit me, to be honest. In the
yeah,
end, I'd forgotten who I was because
yeah,
I had so much going on that wasn't me. It was exhausting. And in the end, my body couldn't cope with it and it just gave up because basically, once you put yourself through that over 20 odd years, that's a lot to put into the mix, especially in perceived high pressure, high sales types of business development roles where, you know, the targets were high. If you weren't successful, you were
yeah,
out. You know, there was no hiding place. I was in the sharp end of that. And yeah, I got paid for it, but my goodness me, you know, it was tough. And every Sunday evening, the whole
mm,
feeling of I don't want to go to work, I'm feeling sick, and you know, start to get depressed because, you know, it's just
that's horrible.
awful feeling because I wasn't being me and I wasn't in a role that I really enjoyed and that I really found was coming from my zone of genius. The clients I thought were lovely. I mean, I just
Yeah,
loved them, and I think that's why I was good at what I did. Um,
sometimes we can put so much pressure on ourselves, and personally, I hate hustle culture. I think it's dangerous, it's damaging. I totally believe you don't get anywhere without hard work, but you have to look after yourself. And social media, I believe, has been a blessing and a curse. And we now have these channels where it's very, very easy to communicate with people. It doesn't cost us anything. And you have to remember that just because social media is there and accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doesn't mean you don't have to use it. You know, I totally ignore any advice around algorithms, the best time to post, what to say. do what you want when you want. And if you haven't got anything to say for a week, or you're feeling a bit overwhelmed with everything that's going on, that's totally fine, because there'll be a day when you wake up and you feel like posting 5 times that day. That's fine too. Don't worry about the algorithm. The people that are meant for you will find you. And the key to social media is making an impression. It's very, very easy to buy your way to millions of impressions. I could create a post now, and within half an hour, I can get that post to reach 1 million, 10 million, 100 million people if I want to put spend. But you're only making an impression if it makes an impression, if that makes sense. You can have 10 million impressions on a post, but actually no one's paying attention to it. We get wrapped up in numbers, competitiveness, amount of likes, amount of engagement. I think people obsess about it way too much. How do you know you're making an impression? Well, there always has to be a reason why you do something. So if it's about generating new business, attracting a new client, generating sales, getting clicks to a website, that's your measure of success. And if you only hit 5 people and those 5 people buy your product or subscribe, then that's successful. It's better than hitting 100,000 people who don't go anywhere close to achieving your business objective. And sometimes we forget that. I learned a very valuable lesson from one of my long-standing clients, who's Lord Sugar. And I've had the privilege of working with him now for over 25 years. And when I started working with him, and like any relationship, you're getting to know someone, I was hungry to impress him. And I wanted to generate opportunities. And I would phone him and say, got an opportunity for you to do an interview with the Telegraph, or BBC News would like to talk to you about the elections. And this is really good because of profile and audience. And he would say to me, no. I'd be like, what? Why? Couldn't really understand it. One day he said to me, I don't want you to get disheartened by the amount of times I say no, because I'm very appreciative of all the opportunities you're giving. But if I have got nothing to say, if I've got nothing to sell, if I've got nothing to give, there is no point talking for the sake of talking. When we've got the new product that comes out for Christmas, or when there's The Apprentice is going on TV, or when I'm about to do this new venture, then let's go back to them. They still want to talk to me. Let's use the opportunity then. And it was a really valuable lesson, because I think we all love the sound of our own voice from time to time. And there's the temptation to say yes to everything, to post on social media the whole time. We feel like if we go on holiday for a week, we've suddenly lost our relevance. It's horrible. Actually, you have to have confidence that if you've built a profile over years and years, if you've got a good reputation, if you've got something interesting to say, people will be ready to listen when you're ready to talk. And sometimes I feel the problem with social media is it's given a free platform to people to talk too much. And AI has not helped that, because what AI has done is it's made it easier and easier for people to create content. It hasn't made it easy for them to create quality content. But what it means is we are just like overwhelmed with lots of noise, and it's harder and harder to cut through. The more messages you receive, the bigger your kind of bullshit buffers are that just deflect stuff without even noticing it. And to really cut through, you need creativity. You need to be authentic. You need to have impact. And AI does have a role to play in that. But I feel like at the moment, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's become very easy to go onto ChatGPT and say, give me something interesting to say on LinkedIn. I work in PR, I do this, I do that. And it will churn out something that on the face of it looks quite intelligent. But is it something I would say normally? Is it adding value? Is it interesting? No. It's much better to wait till I've actually got something to say. And the way that I would use ChatGPT is to say, could you polish this up? Or could you check for grammatical errors? Or is there a better call to action? And I'd use it a bit as like almost sense checking and just making sure grammatically it's okay. And I'd always ask it to keep it exactly the same, just check the grammar, not for them to rewrite it. Otherwise, it just becomes hugely robotic and boring. But I'd also use it as a bit of a strategic and creative sparring partner. So if I've got a thought and I can't quite figure out where that's taking me to, I'd say, I've got a rough idea. I want to write something about this. any ideas or what are other people saying? I'd look at what it says and I'm like, and it will give me that spark, that nugget. But if you're lazy with AI, your comms will be lazy and people will see straight through it. And you're just wasting your own time. And actually, I think it's worse than that. It's a negative reflection on who you are as a person. You know, there's plenty of really interesting, cool, good people out there that I see what they're posting on social media platforms, and I'm like, why? You know, that's not you. I know you. You're more interesting than that. You've got something sparky to say. Why are why is someone else writing it for you? Why are you using a computer to do it? You know, don't lose the confidence to have your own voice. And everyone has an opinion. Everyone has something to say, even if they think they don't. And even the most introverted people can find a style of communication that works for them. And when I say I'm an introvert, I'm not really an introvert on social media, because I guess that's my protective cloak, that I feel okay. You know, do I like getting on a stage? Not really. I'll do it because I know what I'm talking about. As long as I'm in my comfort zone of talking about what I know, then I'm okay. But if you just ask me to go into a room and start talking to people and swapping business cards and almost like showing off, not my style. But I have networked and built my business through reputation. You know, I'm a great believer, obviously, as a PR person, that reputation is everything. So I pride myself on only taking on work I know I'll do a good job of, not being scared to say no, looking after my clients and protecting them fiercely and doing the best possible job I can do. And I know they will do the hard work for me. It's the third party endorsement that when someone says, can you recommend someone, they're going to say me. That's where I put my efforts into, rather than trying to meet new people or trying to impress people I don't know. Of course, sometimes you have to take yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. And whenever I do it, I kind of pat myself on the back and say, well done, you know, it was worth it. I left the house, I did something, look how great it was. But I don't feel comfortable doing it. I mean, interestingly, you know, I find whenever I go to a meeting in town or somewhere that's sort of high footfall area, just by leaving the house, I normally meet someone on the train or, you know, walking into a meeting, walking down the street, and it leads to something. I'm like, I need to do this more often. You know, I'm well connected. I've got a group of people that are useful. You can't always hide behind a screen or behind a social media platform, but you know, you do what makes you comfortable. And what you just told me about sort of feeling overwhelmed and almost making you ill, or actually making you, is awful. And I do think a lot of that is the pressure that people put on us. And it's not real pressure. It's pressure that we feel ourselves that shouldn't be there. So I will always say to someone, do not beat yourself up if you're not always there. I think we also have a tendency, we compare other people's show reels with our behind the scenes video. So we see all these people that are doing really well, perfect agency, never lost a client, all our work's brilliant, all our people have massive smiles on their faces and eat pizza 5 days a week. And then we compare it with our behind the scenes video where there's people that are unhappy and crying in a corner. There's clients that are threatening to quit. There's a campaign that's not going really well. And it's unfair. We're not, you know, there's no such thing as a perfect agency, perfect business, perfect consultant. We're all dealing with, you know, our struggles. You know, use that analogy of a swan that's sort of perfectly gliding across the surface and underneath it's sort of flapping furiously to stay afloat. That's all of us. We're all making it up as we go along, doing the best we can, but you mustn't let that sort of imposter syndrome get the better of you. And, you know, am I a super confident person? No, I have the same self-doubt as everyone has, but I believe in myself and I back myself and I choose to do things that are within my comfort zone and turn away things that I'm not confident in. And then that way I can always back myself. And I think that's really important too. I listened to Richard Branson doing an interview the other week, and he said the opposite. I shouldn't really argue with Richard Branson because he's done okay. But he said something along the lines of just say yes and figure it out, you know, as you go along. There's merit to that, of course. I would rather say no if I'm not sure, because I know there's plenty of stuff I can be doing that I don't need to figure it out as I go along. I know the answers. I'm confident. So, yeah. whether you believe me or Richard Branson's up to you. I'm sure there's
I
merits in
think you're
both
both
arguments.
right,
Yeah.
because Richard Branson and I, not at the same time, but we went to the same school, that was part of my career, and he went
Right.
through it as a kid. And the interesting thing, everything that you hear about Richard Branson, I don't think he is an introvert. I think he's a bit of an extrovert, to be honest.
Mm.
So I think it's horses for courses. And, so ultimately, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. And
Yeah.
I've spent pretty much my whole life not feeling right. And now
Mm.
that I'm the round peg in the round hole, it feels great because you've not got so much energy that you have to waste on
Yeah.
trying to
That's very
just
true.
be okay. It just happens naturally. I mean, goodness me, I could listen to you for hours because what you're coming across with is real lived life experience. And that's what I love about people who come on this podcast is that, you're speaking from your heart. And what you mentioned is looking at your zone of genius, knowing that, and I think from an introvert's perspective, our zone of genius is something which we often have an abundance of energy with because we know we've got that. We can dig deep into that. And what I would say to people, rather like yourself, is go into that because that's where our energy is created. Well, it is where mine is. I know we're all a bit
Yeah.
different, but when you get talking on like you've done on your subject of which you know inside out and backwards and upside down, you can talk about that forever and for ages and with eloquence and meaningfulness and value to people. So I think that once you've discovered that zone of genius is what I help people when I do the training,
Mm.
is I wouldn't be out here in front of the camera unless I knew I could go into my zone of genius.
No, that's very, very, and I think when I reflect on my career, I was quite lucky to. I've never heard the term zone of genius. I like it. I'm not sure what my zone of genius is, but I get the principle of
Well, I
it.
think you've been talking about it. So
Okay, fair
I
enough.
think,
Well,
what
I
is it
feel
you've been
like
talking about? Yeah.
I was lucky to fall into a career, an agency, and meet people that were right for me.
You carry on. I've just got a bit of a technical issue. My camera obviously caught the vibes. Oops, a daisy. For everybody looking, you know me. If this ever happens, don't you worry about it. We're not
Is
going to
that you
stop the
leaving your zone of
podcast.
genius for a second,
We're not going to
temporarily
stop the
departing the zone?
podcast.
But I think I got this really simple philosophy that to be successful, you need three traits. You need to be good at what you do, you need to work hard, and you need a bit of luck. And all of those three have to come together. If you're not good at what you do, you can work really hard, but you're not suited for it. Maybe that's your zone of genius thing, that you haven't found your zone of genius. So you can work hard, put in all the hours. You're never really going to get anywhere because there's people that are better and have a stronger aptitude for it. You need to work hard. And I'm a massive believer in showing up every day, no matter how hard it is. You've got to put the effort in. And unless you've inherited it or, you get very, very lucky, there aren't many entrepreneurs I work with that haven't grafted for it. And then sometimes you just need that element of luck. And people say you make your own luck. It's a bit of a cliche, but I believe actually what luck is about, it's about spotting the opportunities. And the harder you work and the better you are at what you do, the more likely you are to spot those opportunities when they come along. And a lot of luck is about timing, being in the right place at the right time. But with experience and hard work and a zone of genius, you know when those opportunities come and you grab them with both hands. Sometimes you don't. And if you look at, I advise on buying and selling of businesses. Only 4% of businesses in the marketing services industry ever sell. It's a tiny percentage. And sometimes there's really good companies that have worked really hard, really good at what they do, but they've just missed their break in terms of timing. They haven't got that bit of luck. Same with individuals. You can be unfortunate, but whether it's karma or spirituality, I don't know. But in my opinion, if you can get those three factors working for you, the sky's the limit. And that's what you need to achieve success. Two out of the three is not enough. You have to hit all three, and you can set yourself up to do that, but you have to be self-aware of your strengths and your weaknesses. You have to put the effort in, and you have to be open to spotting opportunities when they come your way and not just letting them pass by.
Oh, absolutely. Lots of sayings and phrases have been accredited to Winston Churchill, but I think this was actually one that he did say,
God.
was that most people stumble over an opportunity, get themselves up, dust themselves down, and carry on walking.
Yeah,
And it's not until hindsight, which is the killer, isn't it? Because it's 2020, and you go, oh, yeah. And the other thing is, act on something that you think is a good idea often, because you know what? Don't be the one that actually goes, I thought of that, and now this person's doing it, and they're doing incredibly well with it. Be the person that does the good idea, that if you've thought of it and it's come in from wherever that might be, we were going a bit woohoo with the old universal thing. But if you've got something that you're working really hard with, and as you've said, you don't get to be a virtuoso unless you put in the graft and the hours and hours and hours of practice that it actually takes to be an absolute master at your craft. If you've got that idea, it hasn't just happened by accident, it's happened for a reason.
sure.
And it's because it's in there. Now, yes, you need to be just mindful of perhaps your wherewithal at the time, but those ideas are often the ones which you think, oh, I wish I'd have done that, because looking back, somebody else got that idea and they ran with it, and look what's happened now. So, and the other
Yeah,
thing,
there's a lot to be
yeah,
said for gut feel.
there
And
you go, gut
a
feeling.
lot of
Yeah.
people I advise wait for perfection, and they're like, it's nearly ready, or I just need to do this, or once we've got that, we'll do it. And I'm, to use the Nike phrase, just do it, just get on with it. There's never a better time to do something than today. We always have excuses for not being ready. I remember the day when my business partner sort of came up with the concept of let's start an agency. And my reaction to him at the time was, I love it. I just feel like I need to do another year, or I just not quite the right timing. And I remember him saying to me, you will never feel ready. And it's so true. And I've had that feeling so many times in my career that I just don't quite feel ready, but you just got to get on with it and do it. I mean, I ended up launching my consultancy unbeknown to me, 2 months before COVID hit. No one could have seen that. And I was like, oh, I had 20 years to make this decision of the right time to step back. Why did I have to choose a moment of unprecedented chaos? But actually, it made no difference. I'm not going to say I've done better or worse as a result of COVID happening, but it made no difference. You will all, great companies do well through any sort of economic upside, downside. There is always fluctuations. There's always uncertainty. If you have a good brand, a good service, a good product, you're good at what you do, you'll actually come out stronger in times of adversity. Where people get caught out is weak companies that aren't well run, aren't well managed, aren't well planned. And then a wobbly time comes along and they've got no room for error. And that's where you see companies fail. And it's very sad. But the good companies, the good people fight through any up or down. So there is never a good time. My business partner, when we started our original PR company, had just had twins. They were 3 months old. He'd just moved house. It just got married. It's like you probably couldn't get a more turbulent time in your life to launch a new business. I was at a slightly different stage. My reservations were more, have I got enough experience? I'd done 5 years. I was like, I'm 26. I was 26. I was like, I don't feel ready for this. But actually, we just got on with it. I used to wear a suit for 3 years to try and make myself look older and more grown up. Sadly, now I wear t-shirt and jeans to make myself look younger. But at the time, I did feel like I just had this massive imposter syndrome. I'm not ready to do this, but I was. And that was reflected by the fact that clients put their faith in me, but I felt like I wasn't. So you always have to just get on with it.
Get on with it, yes, and be tenacious and resilient and keep on going. I had a friend who set up a recruitment business in the middle of a recession, and she said, if I can survive this, I can survive anything.
Absolutely, yeah.
And absolutely nailed it. and made huge sums of money, but also placed some cracking people into the
Yeah.
roles so that the businesses could flourish and those people could flourish, etc. And she was just ace. And she just said, I just have to double, treble down sometimes
Yeah.
because I just know that if I keep going and I keep putting that effort in. And I saw an image once which was two tunnels that people were making in this gold mine. You've probably seen it.
Yeah, I know the
And
image.
then there's this seam of gold, and one person just gives up, and the other one actually makes it. And it's just like, don't give up, because it's often at those peak moments. I mean, I started a business through a nervous breakthrough. I mean, nobody could have been any worse off than I was on a mental health basis. It
Yeah.
was all over the place. But I said to myself, if I continue to do what I've always done, I'm going to be dead. I'm
I
not going to
mean,
be here anymore.
yeah, no, that's right. And you have to be self-aware. I think you talked right at the beginning about resilience, and
Yeah.
it's such an important trait. I also think you have to know when to give up, because sometimes you should give up if something isn't working. Doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. I think that's an Einstein quote.
That's what I was
That's the
doing.
definition of insanity. It's hard as an entrepreneur when you've got belief in yourself, but sometimes things aren't working. And I've had failures for sure. Like, my journey has not been one of constant success. There have been things that haven't worked. And I think, look, if you go to America, they almost celebrate failure. And I think in the UK, we're much more reserved, much more embarrassed. Perhaps social media hasn't helped with that, but you do have to know if something isn't working and know when to walk away from it and put your energy into a different direction. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's failure, to me, it's not a failure. And, if you learn from it and you can then go in a different direction, it's only a failure if you keep going to the point where it's destructive and it causes proper damage to yourself, your business. So knowing when something is failing, if it is a strength as well, in my opinion, if that doesn't sound too
No,
ridiculous.
well, and you've worked the journey, we've all seen, you've been on the motorway and there's been an accident or there's been roadworks or something, and you're siphoned off the motorway for your own safety and for your own, you know, onward journey. Life is life, isn't it? It throws us bouquets and it throws us brickbats.
It
It's
does.
like, well, you know what? In a way, they're the same, because ultimately, when you're running a business, there's not a day that goes by, usually, if you're really in the thick of it, that something like, wish that hadn't happened, or, oh, never thought that that was going to go wrong, or what have you. A builder just the other day cut through my internet cable.
Brilliant.
Brilliant, wonderful, what fun all that was. And I had to cancel quite a lot of stuff because in my line of business, I know I've just had a bit of an issue with the camera, but you've got to have an
No,
internet. And
sure.
that's where I thought, my gosh, but ultimately, a couple of people haven't come back to me yet, and they were really keen on what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know what? Life
It happens.
happens.
Yeah. Shit happens, as they
It
say.
does, and
But
it happened to
you,
me. And it's just like, well, it wasn't what I would have chosen. But then again, I just had to recalibrate and get on with it, to be honest.
and
So,
I think, yeah,
yeah,
the ability to be resilient is such an important trait. And one of the things I am a great believer in is never get too high on the highs or too low on the lows,
yeah,
because there will be both in your career. And it's fine to be euphoric for a moment and to celebrate it, but then you got to go again. And also, you're going to have setbacks, however small, however big, and you can't let that drag you down. And it's interesting when you look at sort of sports teams, you often see like a great team just go on a losing run or a winning run for no apparent reason, but it's that sort of momentum that they're keeping, that they're going onto the pitch knowing they're going to win a game without even kicking a ball. And in business, that's where you want to get yourself into that mindset. And when you do lose a game, the trick is to go back for the next game and break that pattern of loss and get back into the wins again. But it happens. We can just get us, energy is such an important thing. And I can go into meetings, pitch meetings, or whatever they might be. Sometimes I just know I've won the business without even opening my mouth. And I don't mean that from an arrogant
yeah.
perspective. I'm just so in my zone, so confident about what I'm doing, that I just know it's mine to, I've won it. Equally, there have been periods in business where I've just, you've had a run of bad luck and one thing after another. And you go in, and I think people read that in you. They see your body language, the way you talk, that sort of doubt wavering in your voice, and you lose something that you should have won. But you have to be resilient, and you have to ride that sort of wave of the ups and downs and realize that you might lose something today, but next week you win something, and not let it take you into a spiral, because having strong mental health and resilience and the ability to fight, all the different fires that you have to fight day by day is what makes a great business person. It also makes you happier as well. If you're not, I think if I look back at what would stress me out 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years, it's very different to today. And the things that keep me awake at night now, I won't bat an eyelid at in a couple of years. That's the experience, that's the journey. But the less stressed I am, the more on top of how I manage my day, the more effective I am, the more I enjoy it. It's all a virtuous
It
circle.
certainly is. And you know what? The toughest things are our opportunities and our lessons to improve, to understand that life isn't always going to be the way that we want. And you have to be forged in the fire to be anything other than just mediocre.
Absolutely.
And a life of mediocrity is a killer, isn't it? So none of us want to have a mediocre life, because we wouldn't be in business if we wanted a mediocre life, because I don't think the two go together, to be honest with you.
No, no one wants to be me.
Wow, Andrew, thank you. I mean, we're coming up to the top of the show, so it has been an absolute delight. Is there anything that you think that you would have loved to have covered that you haven't done that you'd like to bring into the mix before we close?
I mean, I think I've spoken a lot. I don't know whether we covered as much about AI as you wanted
Well,
to
we'll
talk
have you
about.
back. We'll talk about that. But just
Okay.
from the perspective of AI, it can kind of, I know it can, the more you put in of your own personality into it, it can kind of morph that now, which I think is great. So if anybody is thinking to themselves, how do I get that authenticity? I know that, it's much more it's much better in taking your style and stuff like that. But we'll have you
What I
back
would say,
talking
Deborah,
about
is,
that.
their AI is not going to take your job, but you do need to understand how to work with it and use it to your advantage. And the jobs that it will take will be the people that don't get their head around how to work with it and alongside it. So you can't ignore it. It's not going anywhere. It's evolving at a pace that none of us can comprehend, but don't be scared of it. Figure out how to use it to your advantage personally, in business, in life, and everything will be okay. The robots are not coming to take over the world just yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Today.
Not just yet. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And how can people get hold of you? Because I'm just like, oh my gosh, what you've talked about is so inspiring.
I'm pretty easy to find. If you Google my name, then you will find me. But my website is andrewbloch.co.uk. I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on TikTok. Wherever you want to find me, you will find me.
Fine. And that's Bloch.
Correct.
Okay. Bloch, not with a K, because
No.
otherwise you won't get the right
Now, it'd be
answer.
really embarrassing if you go onto Google and it's user not found, but
Like, ooh, whatever.
never
So
heard of him.
Andrew Bloch, Bloch, and that is fabulous. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks,
It's
Deborah.
been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah,
And
it's lovely speaking to you. Thank you very much.
good stuff. And for everybody listening, thank you as well. And do like, comment, and subscribe and share to this episode, because I think this is something which is going to be absolutely brilliant for people in our lives that we care about in business. I think there's a little bit there, though, in our personal lives as well that you can't, won't go and miss as well. So until next time, everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye now.